For this next project, we're going to make a stitched notebook. So this is really great to use for like sketchbooks or notebooks. I'm going to use just printer paper for this one, but you can absolutely use your favorite paper. Thicker paper works too, but you will just use fewer pieces. So I've got 10 sheets of printer paper. I've got a piece of cardstock. You can also cut a piece of Bristol board for this. You're also going to need a small piece of fabric. This is going to be half the size of your piece of paper. And you're also going to need heat and bond, which is, it's basically glue, and it's going to adhere fabric and paper together. So it's sort of like an interfacing. Then we're also going to need some wonder clips, embroidery floss, needle, pencil, rotary cutter. You can also use a exacto knife if you don't want to use your rotary cutter to cut paper. And then the other thing we're going to need is an awl, and that is going to help us poke holes in the spine of the book. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is cut your paper. So I have 8.5 by 11 sheets here, and I'm just going to cut down the center this way. And I'm going to do the same with the piece of thicker cardstock paper. And this might take a few cuts through to get through all of the layers. So now you're going to set aside your lighter paper. So then we're going to cut a piece of the heat and bond and a piece of the fabric to be just slightly larger than your cover, your harder, your thicker paper. So you're going to make sure that your piece of fabric is nicely ironed, because any wrinkles that you have in your fabric are going to look permanent once you attach your heat and bond to the back of it. So we're going to bring this over to the iron and iron these two pieces together. So you've got the sticky, bumpy side up of the heat and bond, and you're going to put the fabric on top of it. And I would use a pressing cloth for this. So just like a scrap piece of fabric, lay it over top so that you don't get anything sticky on your iron. So once you have that ironed on, you're going to peel off the back. Okay, there we go. So you're going to peel the backing off. Now that we have the sticky side on the back of our fabric, we're going to bring it over to the ironing board and put your piece of cardstock on that sticky side, but then we're going to flip it over and do the ironing on this side. And then that way the stickiness gets enough heat to melt onto your paper. And I would put the pressing cloth underneath all of this, because the sticky stuff is going to come out the bottom this time. Okay, so now that I've got it ironed on, now I can trim my edges. Okay, so now I'm going to take my cover and turn it cover side down. Make sure that all of my sheets are as tidy as I can get them. And I'm going to use my wonder clips to clip these together. So now I'm going to mark the center line. I like to do this in a couple of spots and then connect the line. I'll just take those center clips out. Okay, to space out the spots where you're gonna put your holes, you can absolutely measure it, but I usually just eyeball it. So I'll put one in the center. Then I will put one on either side where the clips start. Then I'm going to put one in this in between these two, halfway between them. Same on this side. I'm going to put one halfway. And then I'm going to do the same halfway, 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 halfway. And that's usually enough for this size of book. Okay. So now I'm going to take my awl. This is one from Clover. It's really sharp, so please be careful. And I'm going to put it in and press down. And I want to make sure that I go through the whole thing. You can see the point there. And you're going to make your holes in each of these spots. This is obviously a good idea to do on a cutting mat, or maybe you have a junky cutting mat that you use for this kind of thing. I haven't found that it has left marks in my cutting mat because it's a self-healing one. But you know, if you do this a lot, it could start to damage it. So keep that in mind. Okay, so you're going to get a length of embroidery floss that's about 3 times the length of your spine, and divide it into 3 strands. So you want to make sure to use a needle that has a large enough eye to fit your embroidery floss, and something that's not too thin, because it is going to take a little bit of pressure as you push it through all the layers of paper. So I'm just using this thread gloss to thread my needle, and then I'm going to run it through 2 or 3 times. So the stitch we're going to use for sewing this together is called a saddle stitch, and essentially you are starting in the center, and then you are going to work across these stitches, then you're going to work across the whole thing, and then you're going to come back and meet the tail that you started with. So I'm going to go in this first hole, and I do find it helpful to put a clip here, and that will help to hold your thread in place. And then I'm going to come up through the bottom through this next hole. Then I'm going to go back down into the next one. And I'm going to come up. Through here. And then I'm going to go down through the next one. And then you're going to travel back this way. So I'm going to go in to the next available hole. So that's this guy. And you don't want to pull super, super tight, but you don't want you don't want any of these to be loose. Then I'm going to go back in through this hole. Then through this one here. Okay, so now once you get to the end, you're going to travel your thread back to the middle. Okay, so now we're going into that last hole. Okay. And then we're going to do a little bit of a knot here. So I've got my thread coming out here. I'm going to loop it around. And pull this knot there. And then I'm going to go back in to that center hole. Okay. And then I'm going to give this a nice tight knot. I'm going to wrap it twice. Okay. I'm going to trim these little threads. So now we're going to take the clips off and we're going to fold the book. So you want to make sure that you're folding it so that your stitching is straight on the back. And I like to use Wonder Clips. I've never had a problem with the Wonder Clips popping off or bending. They're pretty strong. But if you're using really thick paper, you might want to use like those bulldog clips. So these clips are going to help kind of train it into shape. You can also put a really heavy book on it, or you can just start using it right away. This is a pretty nice flexible book. So you'll see when you fold a lot of sheets of paper together, you get kind of this extra bit of paper that kind of juts out. If you don't mind, you can just leave it like that, or you can use an exacto or a cutter to just trim those edges off. And it might take a few cuts to get through all the layers. And there you go, the brand new notebook.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And leave us a comment. We love hearing from you.